Hello, and welcome to the vocabulary lesson for the conversation Trip to Washington. In this conversation, Joe and one of his friends named Eric are talking about a trip that Eric took with his wife and son. Eric and his family visited a friend of his and Joe's who lives in Washington. Okay, let's begin with the conversation. Joe says, "Hello?" And Eric says, "Hey, Joe, this is Eric." Hey, meaning in this situation, it's another way to say hi or hello. And Joe says, "Oh, hey, Eric, how's it going?" Oh here is just filler. Filler meaning that it's not even needed. There is no meaning for it. And going is short for going. And Eric says, "It's going well," or he's saying it's going okay, or it's going good. "How about yourself?" Bout is short for about. Joe says, "Yeah, I'm doing really well." Yeah is casual or informal for yes. And doing is short for doing. And Eric goes on to say, "Great." Joe says, "How was your trip up to Washington this weekend?" Now, Washington is a northwestern state of America. It's on the border with Canada. And weekend just means Saturday and Sunday. And Eric says, "Oh, it was just over the top." Over the top. This means very good. Over the top. For example, Lewis's birthday party was so much fun. It was just over the top. And Joe says, "Nice, nice." Nice meaning that's good to know that your trip went well. Nice, nice to hear that. And then Joe goes on to say, and Eric says, "Yeah, it was," and then Joe finishes by saying, "Really wish I could have joined you guys." Joined, meaning gone with. I wish I could have gone with you guys. And then Eric says, "Yeah, well, you should really try next year." And then Joe says, "Yeah, no, it's definitely on my list of things to do for sure." On my list of things to do. This means, or what Joe is saying here is, it's something that I definitely want to do. On my list of things to do. For example, I've always wanted to learn to speak Spanish. It has always been on my list of things to do. And then Eric says, "Good." And Joe says, "Yeah, did you make it up there? As you expected?" Did you make it up there? What Joe is saying is, he's saying, did you make it up there? Because Washington is north of California, the state that Eric left from. Is just a filler. It has no meaning. So it's not even needed there. As you expected, this means did everything go as you thought it would? And then Joe goes on to say, how was your trip up there? This is just filler. It really has no meaning. It's not even needed in this sentence. And then Eric says, "Oh man." So, "Oh man," this is just showing emotions such as, "You're not going to believe this." And Eric goes on to say, "I am just fed up with the airlines." Just here is just filler. It really has no meaning. Fed up. Fed up means upset or angry. Fed up. An example of fed up is, "I am fed up with flying. The airlines charge way too much money." Fed up. And then Joe laughs and Eric laughs. And Joe says, "What's new?" And what Joe is saying here is, I'm not surprised. For example, of what's new. My father's football team has not won a game all season. When I told him that I thought they were going to lose their next game, he said, "What's new?" Then Eric goes on to say, if it's not one thing, it's another. If it's not one thing, it's another. This means more than one bad thing has happened. For example, Sherry has had a bad day. First, she was late for work. Then after work, her car would not start. She called her husband to tell him about her day and said, if it's not one thing, it's another. Eric goes on to say, we got up there. He's talking about getting to the airport. And the flight was delayed, or the flight was late. And it was really crowded. So he's saying there were a lot of people. And then getting out, now getting, this is short for getting. And he goes on to say, you wait. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited for the luggage. Luggage is, they waited for their bags, the bags that they checked. And Eric goes on to say, the wait just got out of hand. Out of hand. This means out of control. Out of hand. For example, the price of plane tickets has gotten out of hand. Out of hand. And Joe says, ugh. Now this is just showing emotions such as, I don't believe all the problems you had. And then Joe goes on, he starts to say, gee, I have not had a good experience with the airlines here domestically in probably about a year, I would say. Now going back, this is short for . And then when Joe's talking about the airlines here domestically, he's talking about the airlines here that fly in just America. Not internationally, not to other countries, but just here in America. He says, in probably about a year. Probably meaning maybe about a year. And then Eric says, it's just, and Joe says, at least, meaning 1 year or more. I have not had a good experience with the airlines, so at least. And Eric says, it's getting worse and worse and worse. So he's saying it's just getting really bad. And then Joe says, yeah, well, I hope that didn't rain on your parade. And rain on your parade. This means to make someone have a bad time. Rain on your parade. For example, Jessica's mother said, I don't mean to rain on your parade, but you did not get the job. Rain on your parade. And then Eric says, no. Joe says that you actually were able to have a good time after you got up there. Actually, hear me, this is just filler. It has no meaning. It's not even needed in the sentence. And then Eric goes on to say, oh, I mean it. It's just so wonderful. Or he's saying it's so great to be up there with those guys. They're like family. Guys. Now, what he's talking about here, this can mean men and or women. He's talking about, in this situation, his friends. And when he says they're like family, like here is comparing his friends to being like family. And then Joe says, you got to tell me a little bit about it. You gotta. This gotta or you gotta, it's what Joe is saying is you have got to tell me a little bit about it. 'Cause, which is short for because, I've never been there. And Eric says, yeah, it's such a beautiful place. Beautiful meaning very pretty place. Eric goes on to say, they've got a bunch of cabins on the water. A bunch, this means a lot. And cabins, these are small wooden houses that people usually pay money to stay in when they go to a lake, the woods, or the mountains. And Eric goes on to say, it's, being with friends and family all the time. And when he says, this is just filler. It has no meaning at all. And being, this is short for being. Eric goes on to say, and my kid had just a blast, just being out on the water. So my kid, or he's saying my child, had just a blast. Now, just here is filler. That has no meaning. But had a blast, that means to really enjoy. Had a blast. For example, I had a blast at the concert. I really enjoyed the music. Had a blast. And then Eric goes on to say, and just enjoying himself. Enjoying. This is short for enjoying. Then Eric says it was really his first time being able to be in a boat and realize or understand that he's on the water and not on the land. And it's at that age, it's just such a new everything's such a new experience. And Joe says, yeah. And Eric says, it was wonderful. And then Joe says, so how did he handle the water? Handle, what Joe's asking here is, how did he do on the water? Or how did he do with the water? And then Joe says, was he jumpy? Like here is just filler. It has no meaning. Jumpy. Jumpy means uneasy. Jumpy. For example, some people are afraid to fly. When the plane takes off, they get jumpy. Jumpy. And then Joe goes on to say, or was he pretty calm while he was out there? 'Cause I know pretty here means really, really calm. And then Eric says he's pretty calm. I mean, he's a water baby of sorts. And Joe laughs. What Eric is saying is he's a water baby of sorts. He likes water. And then Eric goes on to say he just loves the water. He just loves to be in it. So what he's saying is he really likes the water a lot. And Eric goes on to say, up there, the water's really cold, so we didn't really get him in the water. And he had a little bit of problems with the life jacket. A life jacket is something that floats, so it keeps people from drowning if they can't swim. Then Eric says the life jacket was a little tight on him, and that just made him a little uncomfortable, but after getting the first butterflies out of his stomach, he just loved it. Getting the first butterflies out of his stomach. This means getting used to something for the first time. Having butterflies in your stomach means to be nervous. Getting the first butterflies out of his stomach. And then Eric says you could tell, or you could see, he was just having the time of his life. Time of his life. This means a really good time. Time of his life. An example of time of his life would be Kimberly had the time of her life at the party. She was smiling all night. time of his life, or for this example, time of her life. And then Joe says, oh, that's great. He must have been psyched to see Derek's kids also and Mark's new baby. Psyched. Psyched means excited. Psyched. For example, I was psyched to see the new Batman movie. Psyched. And then Eric says, oh, absolutely. So he's saying, oh, definitely, or oh, for sure. At this age, they do a lot of parallel play. And because he's not old enough yet to play with, he kind of plays alongside. What Eric is saying here is that his son is too young to play with other children, so he plays next to them by himself. And then Eric goes on to say, but he's just starting to get the hang of playing with and interacting with. To get the hang of. This means to become better at. To get the hang of. An example of to get the hang of would be, it takes a child a while to get the hang of riding a bicycle. To get the hang of. And when Eric says interacting with, what he's talking about is speaking with. Then Eric goes on to say, and he loves to be in packs of kids. Packs just means groups. And Eric says, he really has a great time. Joe says, yeah, it's like innate. And he laughs and says, innate. This means something you do not need to learn because you were born with it. Innate. And Eric says, yeah, it really is. It's fun to watch him learn. He's at this age of language explosion. What Eric is saying here is he's at this age of learning a lot of new words. And then Eric says, and certainly, or definitely, being around other kids really helps. And then Joe says, oh, definitely. So you guys, you went out on Mark's boat, so that must have been fun. And Eric says, oh, it was. And Joe says, so, what else did you guys do while you were there? When he says what else, he's saying, what other things did you guys do while you were there? And Eric says, well, on the whole boat thing. So what he's saying is, speaking of going out on a boat, and Eric continues to say, we did some crabbing. Crabbing, meaning trying to catch crabs. And then Eric says, where we caught some crabs. Crabs live in the ocean. Many people like to eat crabs because they have soft white meat. And Eric says, and used the boat as sort of a shuttle. Sort of means a type of. And shuttle is just something that takes people somewhere and brings them back. So Eric continues to say, to get from island to island. So we did a little bit, or a small amount, of island hopping. Island hopping just means that they went around to different islands. Then Eric says, with picnicking on some islands. Picnicking is just cooking and eating outside. And Eric says, we cooked some great meals, sort of, with the whole group of us together. So what he's saying is the whole group, all of them, everyone together. And Joe says, oh, that's great. And Eric says, yeah, and some people got some massages. A massage helps people relax. It's something, they pay money for someone to rub their back, legs, and arms. And Eric goes on to say, just tried to chill out and relax. Chill out. This means to relax. Chill out. For example, I like to go to the beach to chill out. It is very relaxing. chill out. And then Eric says, and it was just really low key. Low key. This means relaxing also. Low key. For example, I like Sunday night to be low key because I work early Monday morning. Low key. And then Eric says, a really restful trip, which is what I think about when I think about Mark and their place up there. And then Joe says, yeah, it sounds like you were really able to let go, huh? To let go. This means to relax. To let go. For example, when I go to Hawaii, it is easy to let go. To let go. Now when Joe says, huh, he's saying, do you agree? And then Eric says, it was a longer trip for me than I've taken in the last couple of years. So he's saying it in the last 2 years. Going up there. Going. This is short for going. And then Eric says, we went for five or 6 days. And Joe says, oh, I didn't realize you were going that long. And Eric says, yeah, normally or usually I'm just up there for a long weekend. And Joe says, sure. And Eric says, but this time I thought, I haven't taken a vacation in a while. Vacation is time off from work or from school to go and do something. And a while, this means a long time. And Eric says, and I just want to get up there and chill out. Wanna, this is short for want to. And Joe says, oh, that's great. And Eric says, yeah. And Joe says, I understand that John's living up there now as well. And if for no other reason, I should go up and visit everybody. Or I should go up and see everybody, while he's there. If for no other reason. This means if nothing else made you do something. If for no other reason. And then Eric says, absolutely. He's not living on their property anymore. Property just means land that their friends own. And Eric says, he's moved just to, really close by on the mainland, off of Bellingham. Mainland, this is the main part of land, so it's the opposite of island. And Bellingham, this is a town in the state of Washington. And Eric says, so he's in the area still, and he would just be tickled pink to see you. Tickled pink, this means very happy. Tickled pink. For example, my mom was tickled pink with the birthday present we gave her. She really liked it. Tickled pink. And Eric says, and to hang out with you. I know he would. So, hang out. This means to casually pass time. Hang out. For example, I like to hang out with my friends. Hang out. Then Joe says, yeah, it's amazing or it's unbelievable how, you can let so much time pass or you can let so much time go by and you don't even realize it's happened when it comes to visiting with friends who live far out of town. And what Joe is saying here, far out of town, means far away from him here in San Francisco. And Eric says, that's right. Or he's saying, that's correct. And Joe says, especially, or most importantly, ones that are really close to you. And Eric says, yeah, in the oldest of friends, time just really flies. Now what this means, time just really flies, or time flies, means to be surprised about how much time has gone by. Time flies. For example, time flies when you are having fun. Time flies. Now, when in this sentence, time just really flies, just as is filler, doesn't really have a meaning, and really means, that's filler too, it doesn't really have a meaning. Then Eric goes on to say, and before you know it, it's just been a long time since you've seen somebody. So when you get that time, it's just wonderful to take advantage of it. Take advantage of. This means to be fortunate to be able to do something. Take advantage of. For example, I like to take advantage of the days that I do not work by going to the beach. Take advantage of. And Eric says, and certainly John being all of a sudden on the West Coast. All of a sudden means right away. All of a sudden. For example, the price of gasoline went up all of a sudden. All of a sudden. West Coast, when Eric says West Coast, he's talking about the states on the most western side of America, next to the Pacific Ocean. So those states would be California, Oregon, and Washington. And Eric goes on to say, it's great to be able to just jet up to Washington and see him fairly easily. Fairly here is just filler. It really has no meaning. Jet up, to just jet up to Washington. Jet up means to go somewhere, specifically north. Jet up. And Joe says, yeah, I told him next year I'm going to make my best effort to get up there. Make my best effort. This means to try very hard. Make my best effort. For example, I make my best effort to visit my parents at least one time each year. Make my best effort. And then Eric says, I really, really hope you do. And Joe says, hey, Eric, time's kind of escaped me tonight. Time's kind of escaped me. Kind of here means sort of. Time sort of escaped me. What this means in general is I did not realize how late it had become. Time's escaped me. For example, I wanted to go see the movie at 7 p.m., but time escaped me. Now the movie is over. Time's escaped me. And Joe goes on to say, I'm supposed to meet Kristen for dinner in a little bit. So, I'd love for us to continue this conversation. Or what he's saying is, I'd love to have this conversation again. And then Joe says, maybe tomorrow or something. Something is short for something. And then Joe says, if you're available, or if you have time. And Eric says, hey, that'd be great. And Joe says, okay. All right. Listen, I'll call you then. All right, this also means okay. And Eric says, all right, take care, my friend. Take care. This means, in this situation, it means goodbye. It was nice talking with you. Take care. And Joe says, all right, bye. And then Eric ends the conversation by saying, bye. All right. This is the end of the vocabulary lesson for Trip to Washington. Now, if you need to, go back and listen to this 1, 2, maybe 3 more times. Make sure that you stay relaxed, you don't get stressed or worried. You want to have an understanding of the vocabulary before going to the mini story. So when you feel ready, then go to the mini story. And I will see you next time. Goodbye. Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss. And we just wanted to let you know that this material has been copyrighted in the year 2008 by Learn Real English, LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com